So very few people know this, but I technically failed my public speaking class in college. Okay, well, I didn't really fail. I was supposed to get a B in this particular rhetoric class, and I got a C. And I needed a B in order to continue through my rhetoric and media studies major, move on to other classes. But I got a C. And it was like, yo, this public speaking thing ain't for me. Which was heartbreaking because prior to that point, this was sophomore year in college, and up to that point, I've been MCing, did messages at my youth group in church. I open mics and conducting those, DJing at parties and dances and whatnot, speaking in front of council members, speaking at in classes and other presentations. Like, being up front with a microphone in hand was something I knew early on that was going to be a part of my identity, at some level, some fashion. I mean, honestly, I don't know if I said this out loud. It's been a while if I have, but I wanted to be the next Ryan Seacrest. I wanted to be the next Ryan Seacrest in high school. That dude was everywhere. He was hosting everything. He was on the radio. He was on TV. He was all over the place, right? And, I guess we can modernize that a little bit. Nick Cannon's all over the place. Steve Harvey's all over the place. Terry Crews, so people, and at that time, I was like, you know what? Ryan Seacrest is the man. I want to be the next Ryan Seacrest, right? So I went into college with that in mind, that I'm going to go into it, get a communications of some capacity. Rhetoric media studies was what it was called at Willamette, and eventually move into a space where I'm in some sort of a media broadcasting, and then maybe even some politics around down the road, but just like crafting my platform, if you will, and crafting a space on the stage to speak, be a public speaker. Until I got that C, I was like, this ain't for me. And I wish that, and I wish at that time that I failed that class, that I would have been a little bit more vulnerable in opening up both my dream and this adversity that I experienced to somebody, because at that time that I got that C, I lost all confidence in my ability to be a public speaker. I thought that the way that the class was structured, the way that they asked me to craft a speech and do the speech, I wasn't comfortable with. And I distinctly remember doing a speech, and I asked, like, maybe 8 minutes into the speech, hey, can I start over? And it was terrible. And I was just not comfortable at all in that space. Now, granted, this was sophomore year of college, like the third semester total in college. I wasn't already being a great student in college. So there's a lot of other factors that contributed to me getting the C. I could have done a little bit better in my studies. I could have been more attentive and focused on exactly how this class was structured and what I needed to do to pass it. But again, if I was a little bit more open at that time, my confidence wouldn't have been shot, because from that point forward, until maybe really a few years ago, so I went like a solid 5 to 6 years of thinking that speaking wasn't for me, and I needed to find a new way to leverage my voice. The positive in that, because I'm working to see the positive in everything, is that it allowed me to be more substantial in my speaking and not just pontificate. Shout out to Gary Vee. But not to just be motivational or spew out various quotes or whatever. It's like, no, like what truly do I want to talk about, and where does that come from, and how do I structure it in a way that entices the audience to do something, inspire emotion or take action or to ponder and reflect. Those various things came after the fact, after I failed. And it took about maybe 5-6 years for me to realize, like, oh, this is what I was trying to grasp in that class. Like, these are the elements in speaking that I needed to have at that time that I failed. But I didn't see that connection and tie. And it immediately made me think that, oh, because I failed, this is not for me and I need to move on. So 2 things that made me think about that, or quite a few things, but when it comes to me failing at that time, one was like, again, what would have happened if my confidence wasn't completely shot at that time? How much further in my speaking career would I be? Secondly, grateful that it did change directories a little bit, because I wouldn't have found sociology or delved deep into the community aspects that I truly love, and being involved in that space, being more intentional one-on-one with the dynamics and relationships that I have versus just speaking to masses, right? And then now, another thing I think about now is like, okay, here we are. What do we do? How has that experience transformed the way that I now view the world? And what do I now do with this craft? Because even in challenges, even when we go towards an initiative, there will be a challenge that we'll face. And in that challenge, we have a decision to make. Either we continue to push forward, or we scale back and find something else to do. Or maybe there's a third one of being patient and knowing how to navigate that space well, so we know when to push forward and when to dial back. So when it comes to this, it's like, now that I'm in this space where I see my craft, I see what it can do, I'm grateful for the experiences that I have, and I'm no longer letting that moment of failure define my calling and gifting. I have a responsibility and obligation now to push it as far as I can go, right? As far as God will allow me, and encourage other people to also push and leverage their gifts to make the world better, to make the community better, to glorify God, right? So I share that only because there's something within you that you have been called to do. And at the point of which you step into your calling, you face adversity and get knocked down, right? In the moment when you're knocked down, I want you to reflect on the why. What is it that you desire in this space? And what is it that failure taught you in that moment about yourself and about your calling, and what needs to be done in order to overcome it? And I also want you to think about, who can you connect with on this journey, to where when you do fail, or when you do face adversity, right? And I'm not going to call it failure. When you do face some sort of opposition or a wall or a barrier, you have somebody to walk through with you to help you overcome that, to talk to you specifically and speak power into your life, to give you strategies and tips on how to break it down, climb over it, or walk around the barrier, the adversity that you face, right? To remind you of who you are. Because without those things, you could easily be derailed. You can easily have your confidence shot, your ego taken out. And you're way too valuable of a person, and have a way too valuable of a gift to have it be lost when you face adversity and didn't have somebody to support you through it. So while I am grateful that I got that C and I went on this new trajectory and informed the way that I see the world, I do wish that I would have been more intentional about leaning into my community or finding community to lean into to help me persevere through that at that time. And that's what I'm pondering on the patio.